Hello and welcome to another episode of Frame Statement. Today we're going to discuss this crazy lens. This is an absurdly good lens with one major flaw. I'm going to talk about the flaw at somewhere in the middle of the video. But before that, let's talk about what makes this lens really, really good. I'm talking about this 24 to 120 f4 kit lens. This lens comes as a kit with a lot of Nikon cameras, but this is not just a kit lens. This is a lens that's got so many things going for it. I'll tell you, to begin with, it's a fixed aperture f4 lens. Secondly, this is perhaps the only lens that covers 24 to 120 f4. Sony and Canon gives you 24 to 105. This is 24 to 120. And let me tell you that extra 15 millimeters at the long end really can matter in some situations. I think we should all admire the beautiful build quality of this lens. This is an externally zooming lens, but it feels quite nicely built. It's got a metal bayonet here. So yeah, weather sealed. The zoom ring is quite smooth. And it's got this, it's got this resistance that it easily retracts, but you have to put some force to push it out. Tells you that the lens static position is to be in this closed position, which is very, very nice. It's got 3 rings. You have one ring here, which I always switch off because when I'm shooting, I don't want to, by mistake, touch this ring and maybe it is set to autofocus and then my autofocus is getting disturbed. I don't want that to happen. I like the zoom ring. I like the fact that it's quite thick and nice. And this is one more control ring which you can program. You got one function button here, and you can customize that button for anything. By the way, this is on the Nikon Z8 and Tamron 35 to 1.4 f mount adapt. Let me know if you want to see a review of this lens. This is one of my favorite lenses, to be honest. I think look at the bokeh in the background. That is a Sony a7 IV. I'm shooting in 12-bit log on the Z8 and I'm shooting at S-Log 3 10-bit 422 on the Sony a7 IV and the Samyang 50mm 1.4, the latest version. If you want to see reviews of these lenses and also these cameras, again, let me know in the comment section. Before I start talking about this lens again, subscribe and help me reach 6,000 subscribers by the end of March. So help me out there and give this channel a little bit of a push. Now, I talked about how well balanced this lens is. No, I didn't. I have to say, if you mount it on any camera, I think most of the lens elements are actually at the sort of middle to back of the lens. And so it never feels front heavy. Even when you zoom out, it never feels front heavy. It kind of feels that the weight is right at the center or slightly towards the rear of the lens, so that when you mount it on a camera, you have most of the weight towards the camera and it doesn't tilt forward. And when it doesn't tilt forward, your hand doesn't get tired. You're in a position to hand hold the lens for a longer amount of time. And this is the lens which you'll probably need to work with for a long time, because this is the kind of lens that you use for most situations, for run and gun photography or filmmaking. F4 is good enough for most situations unless it's very dark. But then if you're using something like a ZF and in future the Z6 III and currently the Z6 II, for example, those are very good cameras when it comes to high ISO performance. So even at ISO 3200, f4 is good enough in many situations, especially if you got a well-lit wedding in a good hotel or somewhere. So if it's a good property, I think you're going to actually be able to use this f4 lens in night as well in some situations. So it's a very, very versatile lens. And the question that will come to everyone's minds is, should you go for a camera with the combination of 24 to 120, or should you actually go with any Z mount camera with the 70 to 24 to 70 f4? That's a question I'm going to answer in the later part of this video. Let's talk about the autofocus. The autofocus is so good. I have been shooting with this lens. I actually keep doing this with this lens because it's just, I should stop doing that. The autofocus of this lens is so good. I was using this lens with the Nikon Z8 primarily, and I forgot about autofocus, to be honest. I just forgot all about it. It's absolutely beautiful to use, and it's quite fast, really, really fast at any focal length, it's fast. I think I saw one shot where I saw it miss focus by a bit. So yeah, very good autofocus in this lens. It's You're going to forget about autofocus when you use this lens. I think the strength of this lens, like I said, is the amazing range. 24 millimeters to 120 means there's so much compositional range in this within this beautiful focal length between 24 to 120. If you want to have one lens, like if you want to have a starter beginner kit, but a very good high quality professional level of kit, and you want to cover all of it in just one lens, this is the lens. If you want a travel kit, this is the lens. You want to go to the zoo, you want to do street photography, this is the lens for all of those things. F4 on a full frame camera will give you enough bokeh. Look at some of these pictures. You see the perspective change from 24 to 35, 50 to 120. I mean, to be able to actually work with a lens that gives you so much in terms of focal range is amazing. So there's so much creative perspective between 24 to 120. Then comes the other thing. This lens has got an amazing strength, that is that at 120 millimeters focal length, this lens can really get close to a subject. If you do tabletop photography, for example, and you want to get, and you don't have a macro lens, but you want to get close to that object, and maybe you can crop a bit in post because you have a Z7 or Z7 II or Z8 or Z9. Those are all almost 46 megapixel cameras, so you can crop a bit. This lens can get you fairly close. As you can see, this is quite good, and the close-up performance is not bad at all. It's quite good. Okay, now let's talk about the picture quality. Let me tell you, the picture quality of this lens is incredible because I shot directly at the sun. Okay, I shot directly at the sun, and I'll show you the pictures. I saw almost no distortion in the lens at all. I mean, what I mean by that is that when you typically shoot directly at a light source, at the edge of any object, you're going to see some amount of chromatic aberration. You're going to see those purple and green fringing happening. You don't see that happen with this lens at all, and that is amazing. Then comes the fact that there is almost no chromatic aberration of with this lens. Let me show you. In fact, if you look here, this is at 24 millimeters, all right, and it is wide open at f4. Let it load. Wide open at f4, and this is where the camera is focused. You see this area, you have a little, and I have zoomed in by 800%. I can see a little bit of green fringing here. You can see the Uber driver, right? When you respond, you see a little bit of like green fringing, and probably here you will see you can see slight purple fringing. So you have a combination of green fringing and purple fringing wide open at f4 at 24 millimeters. But let's go to f5.6, and I think it's going to be gone. Yeah, there's nothing at f5.6 at 24 millimeters, and yeah, I mean there's nothing that's visible. Absolutely nothing at f8. I mean it's super sharp and super clean. Super sharp and super clean. Beautiful. I mean, and I zoomed in 800%. Let's see how it performs, let's say at 83 millimeters. All right, you will see a bit more bokeh. So at f4 here, again you see a little bit of chromatic green fringing here at f4 at 85 millimeters, and you see very slight, you don't see that much purple fringing actually, you just see a little bit of green fringing at f4 83 millimeters. And if you go to f5.6, you have nothing. It is so clean. Let's look at 120 millimeters. I think it's here. If you look at 120 millimeters at f4, okay, again, I mean there is no chromatic aberration, man. I don't see any chromatic aberration, in fact, at 120 millimeters. I don't know, it's probably slightly sharper between 24 to 50 to 60 even, but it's more corrected, I think, at 120 millimeters. Very, very interesting, because when you're zooming in, you're probably going to use this lens zooming in more than you're going to use this lens wide. So I'm very happy to see that it's got very good acceptable level of sharpness, but at the same time, and we'll talk about sharpness going forward, but it's got hardly any chromatic aberration even at f4 at 120. Let's look at, and here is what I was talking about, look at this. I mean, there is absolutely nothing. I'm shooting straight at the sun here, straight at the sun, okay? And there is nothing. You do not see any purple fringing, green fringing, nothing of those things. I mean, nothing of those sorts. Okay, I think there was another picture. So again, at f4, at I think what 83 millimeters, maybe there is what 1 or 2 pixel layer of purple fringing here. Let me show you here. Maybe there's 1 pixel deep layer of purple fringing. That's it. And that's at 84 millimeters f4, shooting straight at the sun, and you do not see any artifact. You see little bit of flare there, but then the exposure is slightly higher, as you can see the histogram here. Now if you see a slightly more darker, slightly less exposed shot like this one, you see most of it is on the black side. You don't see much ghosting here, right? It's very clean. It's and very high level of contrast. Okay, moving on, let's see how it performs in terms of sharpness at 24 millimeters. Let me show you. I have for all these images I've zoomed in here, right? And I'm going to focus on this digit. It says it's a numeric 4. I'm going to zoom in and see how sharp the 4 is. That's one thing. And we're going to also see vignetting. So if you look at this at 24 millimeters f4, it's quite sharp. Okay, so I think this is f5.6, this is f4, and this is f8. I can't decide between f5.6 and f8. I feel as if the f6 image is slightly sharper. So now if I compare that with some with for example f11, you see it's already sort of starting to show lack of resolution because diffraction. Hey, I talked about it in a video. I'm going to link it somewhere. See, this is let's go here. Let's go anywhere, in fact. All right. So this is f 5.6. This is f11. Look at this. This is f11. You can already see it doesn't resolve the entirety of 46 megapixels. I mean, you're seeing diffraction right now. The light rays are bending at this point, and it has lost a bit of information. The light rays are not carrying the full information. It's a bit distorted. So you're seeing that on the image. I think on a 24 megapixel camera, it's going to show very look, we're at 18% zooming in, but if you look at 5.6, it's quite sharp. So let's go to f16. As you can see, f16 is bad. Okay, even at 24 millimeters, f16 is bad. On the left is f16. Oh my god, f22 is quite bad. So yeah, 5.6 f8, that's your sweet spot. I think you're going to see the same thing happen at for 24 millimeters. Let me come out of this. This is 120 millimeters and f4, right? And you're going to see that this is quite sharp, but the f5.6 image is sharper. Let it load. Yes, it's sharper, and I think you're going to see that the f8 is actually sharper than 5.6. I think we're going to see that happen right now. This is f5.6 on the right, and on the left you see f8. I see that the f8 is slightly sharper. Let's just interchange it. Now you see f5.6 on the f8 on the right. All right, f8 is now on the right, and f5.6 is on the left. I think that the f8 image is slightly bit sharper, and what I'm interested to actually see is how f5.6 looks at f16. It doesn't look good. Okay, it's quite. What about f11? No, it doesn't look that good. I mean, it looks okay, but f8, go till f8, and of course at f22 it's going to sort of break down. As you can see here, it's gone. It's gone. So, you know, go till f5.6 or f8, and that's what I talked about. Diffraction, man, it matters. Not all lenses can actually resolve at at f11. Most lenses will do a very fairly decent job at f8. Just remember that as a thumb rule in most situations. Okay. Now let's look at its major flaw. Here is one image, as you can see, so can you see the flaw in this image? Let me just go to develop and let me just increase exposure. Okay, let me decrease shadow, let me increase the black levels, highlight is up, white is up. You can see the amount of vignetting in this image is crazy, and I kind of don't like that. No, I don't like it. I see a lot of vignetting in this image. Same thing here. Let me just copy this kind of editing and paste it here. You see, look at this amount of vignetting. It's like it's made for a smaller sensor. It's barely covering the entirety of the full frame Nikon Z8, ZF, whatever sensor. So if we ever see a second generation of the 24 to 120, I think Nikon needs to fix this, especially after the likes of Plena, which has a larger projection area than the sensor, and you don't get any distortion in bokeh. I think this is this lens major flaw, and you see that happen through the range. Really, I mean, just look at this. Just look at the left and the right. As I go, this is f4. All right, this is f4. As I go from f4, 24 millimeters, f5.6, it brightens up. f8, f11, f16, it brightens up, and then almost the same at f22. So it keeps getting brighter at the corner till f16, and it just not just at 24 millimeters. Let's see, what about 50 millimeters? Okay, you see the same thing. It keeps getting brighter. All right. And what about 120 millimeters? Okay, let's see. This is 120 millimeters at f4. Look at the book. Look, this is f5.6. This is f8. This is f11. It keeps getting brighter. This is f16. Even f16 is a bit brighter than f11. This is crazy. And f22 maintains the brightness levels of f16. So this lens vignettes a lot, and it's not like if you stop down a couple of stops, it's going to be all right. No, for you to have a very clear image, you need to stop down to f16. But at f16, you don't have a lot of sharpness. In fact, you start losing enough sharpness starting f11, especially if you have a 46 megapixel camera. If you have something like a ZF or a Z6 III, Z6 II. But in future, if the Z6 III is not 46 megapixel, it applies. I'm recording this in March 2023. If you're shooting this on a slightly lower resolution camera, you can probably afford to go down to f11, even f16, and maybe it's going to be fine, and you're going to get rid of that vignetting. But if you want all that resolution, yeah, you'll have to sort of make do. You have to compromise. You have to choose. Do you want vignetting? Are you okay with vignetting? Can you fix in the post? I don't like doing that. If not, then you have to lose a bit of image quality, because. But then I guess if I want sharpness at f8 or f5.6, and I don't want the vignetting, because the vignetting is higher at wider apertures. You have the highest amount of vignetting at f4, and it keeps getting better, but it never gets fully out. It never goes out. It's always there. So it's a compromise. You have to understand what you want. If you want, of course, it's better to not lose all that image quality at f16. Therefore, possibly shoot at f5.6 and try and fix the vignetting in post. You're going to lose a little bit of corner image sharpness, but then you're likely to have your subject right in the middle of the image. If you like this content, if you like this review, let me know what you think of this lens, and let me know what you think of this review. Let me know what else you want to see in this channel. I'm very excited to have you here. Subscribe and help me reach 6,000 subscribers. See, I'm breaking the journey in smaller bits. I want to reach 6,000 subscribers by the end of March, and then I'm going to try and reach 10,000, fingers crossed, by the mid of this year. So yeah, support. I'm going to see you soon with another one.